Good afternoon and welcome to the 330 Sports Show. My name is Justin Coffin. Today is Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. I'm joined in studio by Joe Danier. This is Youngstown Studio production, and we appreciate you guys tuning in. We will have plenty of talk with the Cleveland Browns. Season just ended. We're going to also talk the debacle that was the college football playoff last night, 65-7, Georgia won. If you're an Ohio State fan, as I am, you realize the true national championship was the Peach Bowl on New Year's Eve, where if you're a Buckeye fan, I don't know if you're like me, but that really hurt watching that game last night, knowing that you're probably the national champions. But anyways, we will talk about that. We will also get in a little bit in the NFL playoffs today. The seedings are set, all that stuff. We'll talk Cavs. Donovan Mitchell was the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Actually, LeBron was the Western Conference Player of the Week. And we'll have some just more news and notes around the sports world. A couple items want to get to before we get into our normal show. First of all, Damar Hamlin was released. He is released from the hospital at this time last week. We didn't know if he was going to live or die. And so, just great news from around the NFL. Damar Hamlin is released and will be able to return back to Buffalo. So that is fantastic news. More on a local front, I was actually sick this weekend, so I wasn't able to get out, but there was a service and calling hours for former Boardman basketball head coach Ron Michella. Wanted to, just wish his family, his former players, everyone that was close with him, just wanted to say rest in peace to Ron Michella. I didn't have a really close relationship with him. I knew him, on the basketball court a little bit, but I mostly knew him from coaching two of his grandchildren, Brian Terleski and Jenna Vivo. They both, I coached Brian at the 8th grade basketball level. I coached Jenna as an assistant at the high school level. And obviously Ron being a Boardman basketball coach. And then Jeff Hamilton took over for him. I took over for Jeff Hamilton, and there has been one other coach since then, Brett Green, and now Jeff Hamilton is actually back, and he brought on Coach Michella as an assistant this year, I was told. So, just wanted to send my thoughts and prayers out to the Michella family, and everyone that was associated with Ron. A polarizing figure, to say the least. But if you got to know him a little bit off the court, he was a really, really good guy. And, he's got some good stories. And we actually had a show, one of our first, few months, we had both Brian and Jenna on. I shared the link on our social media pages. So, you can go out and check that out. It's in the first 8 minutes of the show. I had him share a Ron Michella story, from their grandpa and their perspective on things. So wanted to, again, just give a condolences to the Michella family. So with that said, let's get into the show we were going to do. And here it is. So the Cleveland Browns. Joe, this is going to be our season wrap up with the Browns. As you and I kind of predicted, Joe Woods is gone. So he is fired. Are there more changes to come? I would say definitely. So that's a start. Joe Woods is gone. Now, based on the press conference yesterday, it sounds like Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry will sit down and make that hire for the next defensive coordinator. Sounds like it could be Brian Flores, who was a former Miami Dolphins head coach, and then with the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. Could be Jared Mayo, who's like an assistant defensive coach with the Patriots. Could be a few other guys. But thoughts on the defense this year and where you think the Browns maybe could go from here?
So I think to Joe Woods, I was with you that he needed to go, but the defense really came back alive towards the second half of the season.
It did.
So I almost thought he was going to escape the
Mhm.
death spiral here, and I thought, oh gosh, just good enough not to get fired. But
Yeah, right, right.
But I think a lot of those positions need to be just resituated because something's not firing. There's a cylinder that's not. You don't know why it's not firing, but there's something missing there.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about that is I felt like it was the same thing last year. The defense was like kind of feeling its way through the season, and then they got really good towards the end of last season. And it was the offense that held the team back. This year, it felt like, Deshaun kind of struggled in his 6 games back, but he did okay enough. They went 3-3, but it felt like the defense towards the end of the season was playing well, and the offense was kind of struggling. So this team as a whole just really wasn't playing complementary football at all throughout the season.
And you know what? I think their biggest problem is that they get these larger than life personalities. Yeah. And instead of them cohesively, working together, I think they're all on their own island, and I don't think they work well together that way.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's there's definitely a personality and a leadership issue, and 100%. Usually that starts at the top. So if you're looking at things like a pyramid, it's generally you could say ownership is at the top, which it should be, but the Haslams have not been the greatest owners in NFL history here. Haven't been the worst either, but
and I think they've come down from the full control of all things, and I think they've given it to their front office instead of them making the calls.
Yeah, and a lot of people were calling for Dee Podesta and Andrew Berry and stuff. I actually like their front office. I think it took them a long time to figure things out, and but if you look at the makeup of this roster, there's a lot of good talent. But at the end of the day, talent and what's the word I'm looking for? Potential will get you fired, because it's like, oh yeah, well, they're supposed to be this. Well, they're not, and they're not. If they're not putting that out on the field, then they kind of just are what they are. And that's an average football team.
Yeah,
so
and the league doesn't have a lot of tolerances for players to grow up and get their legs underneath them.
No, especially, if you're a middle round guy, you might get a couple years to develop, but if you're a first, second round pick, you're expected to make an impact right away. Right. There's no time to grow up, and that's just that. So I want to go over just a couple of the boring stats before we get into some of the nitty gritty, and we're gonna have a little fun here with playing a little game of who should stay and who should go. So let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty here. And this was the Browns defense this season. So 14th in yards allowed, 20th in points allowed. They were 25th against the run. Terrible. 5th against the pass, not bad. So less than 200 yards a game, but that's what we're looking at from a defensive perspective. So what are those? I'll put those numbers back up. What do those numbers tell you, Joe?
I think that your defensive backs are getting a lot of tackles.
Yeah. I mean, and if they're coming up in run support, to me, looking at that, what that tells me is our defensive line isn't good enough. Not at all. And that's, again, maybe where those DBs have to come up and make those tackles, your safeties, your corners, because the defensive front isn't getting it done.
Right. In a couple of those games, there were just good plays and good blocking, but some of them, it just was a sieve, and we couldn't stop anything from piercing.
I look back at that Chargers game, and that's going back all the way to week 5, and the Chargers came into the game with the last ranked rushing attack in all the NFL. And that was only through the first month of the season, but still the Browns defense could not stop them running the ball. And that was the game the Browns missed a field goal late to win the game. But if they could have just stopped the run, that's one of those many games that they should have won this year. You look at the Chargers game, you look at obviously the Jets game, you look at the Falcons game, which they couldn't stop the run either. And it was just, it was not good.
Yeah, to put it. That's where our draft needs to go heavy, is that line I mean, yes, it's one of those things where our edge rushers were super important and we nailed that down for a season, but we need to go internal now.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's flip to the opposite side of the ball. The offense, and the offense overall wasn't bad. Really wasn't bad. 14th overall in yardage, about 349 a game. Kind of middle of the pack there in scoring, about 3 touchdowns a game, 21 points. Rushing, right up there at the top, 146 a game, and passing about 202 yards a game. But generally, teams that are rush heavy aren't, as strong passing.
And if we started off the season with more of a game manager rather than someone who could stretch the field too.
Yeah, exactly. And Brissett, you look at Brissett's numbers, this was the best year of his career. He played 11 games, did a great job. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be back. I would love to have him as your backup quarterback going forward.
I love when they put him in there on those 4th downs.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's cool because, most of the time they'll sneak it, but sometimes they'll do unfortunately that game against Cincinnati where they do that crazy pass that would have worked if it was on target. But, it's like, I don't know. But Brissett was a breath of fresh air. I think he was a leader in that locker room. 100%. And, maybe they can get something done with him. I'm not expecting it, but, we'll see. So let's get into Deshaun Watson a little bit. These were his numbers on the season. So 6 games played. The Browns went 3-3 in those games. Completion percentage wasn't pretty, but you got to factor in the weather. Remember that Christmas Eve game where it was like negative 20 degrees, could not complete a pass, but in those final couple drives, I think he had 3 drop touchdown receptions.
Well, I'll tell you this, like that first game, his accuracy was in the dirt.
It was terrible. Yeah.
But since then,
yeah,
I didn't say like he overthrew a bunch of them. It was more drop passes and throwaways.
Right. Exactly. And again, I don't want to make excuses for a guy that probably talent-wise is top 5 in the league as a quarterback. But when you don't play a meaningful football game in 700 days, if you don't do anything for 2 years and you get thrown right back into the fire, you're not going to be nearly as good as you used to be. That goes with literally any job, anything you can think of. If you're a chef and you get thrown back in the kitchen and you haven't cooked for 2 years, you're not going to make that same meal as well as you did before. If you haven't driven, could you imagine if you didn't drive a car for 2 years and then you get back behind the wheel? It's not going to be as smooth of driving as it was before you stopped driving, So just little comparisons like that. But if we look back at his numbers one more time, the 58 completion percentage, not good enough. 1,100 yards, which is about 183 a game. Not too bad. 7 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Okay, but the number that stuck out to me was 20 sacks. He took 20 sacks in 6 games, so a little more than 3 sacks a game. And he is known for getting sacked. He was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league when he was with Houston, but he had no offensive line. The Browns are kind of known for their offensive line. They've done a pretty good job building it. There's a few guys, Jed Wills being number 1, that I don't know what's up with him. Maybe he needs another year under his belt, but we'll see. So what are your thoughts on Deshaun Watson, what you saw?
I love to have a quarterback that could scramble, but it can't be every freaking other down.
Exactly.
He's gonna get himself hurt. Or, it's basically saying that the offensive line can't protect him and he doesn't trust the pocket.
I agree. And I think, to me, the Browns' biggest need this offseason, you have Amari Cooper, stud number 1 wide receiver. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who stepped up and become a really good number 2, not a great number 2, a good number 2 weapon. But then who's your third receiver?
Anthony Schwartz, of course.
I got a list with him on it in a minute.
Did you forget him?
I think the Browns forgot about him too, because have not. The last time I heard Anthony Schwartz's name, remember he took that reverse in the Tampa game, and I think he got like a concussion maybe in that same game. Probably. Haven't seen him since. So and David didn't really.
Bell?
I like David Bell.
I do, but he's got a lot.
But he's not he needs a little bit more time in that oven, I guess, to cook a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? So he is a good receiver. He's like a poor man's Jarvis Landry. Right. You know, he's going to be that possession receiver. He's not going to stretch the field. The Browns need a deep threat or a speedy receiver. That's what to me, that's their 1A. Yeah, one that can catch the ball too. Yeah, Anthony Schwartz is fast. He just can't catch the ball. So yeah, that's a great thing to have.
I'm ruining your Anthony Schwartz slide.
No, Anthony, he's coming up soon. Let's focus on the good though before we get to the bad.
Nicholas.
So Nick Chubb, 302 carries, 1,525 yards. Another season where he averaged over 5 yards a carry. That's unheard of in the NFL.
Remember Trent Richardson, 2.5, just to remember.
Exactly. He had 12 touchdowns on the ground this year. He also had 27 catches this year, I think, which was like 5th on the Browns in total receptions, 239 receiving yards, and also had 1 receiving touchdown, which was actually in the last game against Pittsburgh. So pretty good numbers by Nicholas Jamal Chubb. He has got to be the bright spot for this team, since he has come back. And he is a guy that as long as he is healthy and ready to go, I think the Browns are going to keep him around. Let's talk about another bright spot, Amari Cooper. Nearly 80 catches this year, 1,160 yards, about 15 yards a catch, 9 touchdowns this year for Amari Cooper. So
he is a route runner.
He's one of those guys that would say, "Oh, he's quick, he's not fast," but he has an elite skill in route running, and he had a drop here or there, but his hands are incredible too.
And you know what? Honestly, he has the respect of the guys covering him, where they don't, they have respect for his ability.
Yes, and I think he's got the respect of that wide receiver room too. So hopefully a David Bell or a Michael Woods, who is kind of learning the ropes, can kind of go under his wing and kind of figure things out.
Amari and Nick are real similar in personality too.
Quiet. Yeah. And that's something too I want to talk to you here in a little bit about when we get into the roster makeup. But some of the Browns' best players are the quieter ones. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to that in just a minute here. Another bright spot, Donovan Peoples-Jones, 61 catches, 839 yards, about 14 yards per reception, and 3 touchdowns through the air. Also had that punt return touchdown against Houston. So did a nice job for a number 2 receiver. I would love those numbers as a number 3 receiver. If you could get one more guy in there that, again, can stretch the field, can make the defense back up, get the safeties on their heels a little bit. And then the next bright spot on the offense is your guy.
My guy.
David
Njoku. David Njoku.
He's doing this commercial for like Sarchone Chevrolet, and he's like working out in the cornfields and stuff. I'm like, David Njoku has never been in a cornfield until this commercial, but it made me laugh. But these are through 14 games because he missed 3 games with a concussion, I believe, or some sort of injury. Or no, it was an ankle sprain, excuse me. But 58 catches, 628 yards, about 11 yards a catch, and 4 touchdowns, including that unbelievable one against Tampa Bay, which was like the play of the year maybe for the Browns. Did have a drop in that Saints game that could have tied up the game, but and pretty good season for David Njoku.
And I like that both of our quarterbacks linked up with him, so he's easy to be a quarterback's tight end. So, but he needs to stop hurdling people. Again, I look at injuries here. Stop jumping over people.
Yeah. When you're that freakishly athletic, you think you can do anything, but
sleep on and think he can fly.
Yeah, exactly. So Joe, I mentioned Joe Woods is out. Yes. What changes would you make if you're Andrew Berry for the Browns? Like, I'm not saying you have to name a player, but you had mentioned a couple things earlier. But if you could make, let's just say, one change on offense, one change on defense, what would you change?
I'm going offensive line, and I'm going both barrels on it. I want Deshaun to not only be protected and healthy. I want him to feel he can get in the pocket and be smart and have time to throw the ball. And you bring in a receiver that's quality, and then you have those depth of receivers as well. So that's where I'm going.
All right. I like that. So for me, if I had 2 wishes, I like your offensive line comment because I think the Browns built their offensive line for the run. Deshaun Watson is a mobile quarterback, and you might need some of those offensive linemen to maybe be a little bit more mobile. So that might be something they need to look at making a trade or tweaking. They have some great guards, but those guards are run heavy guards. I think Joel Bitonio can do just about anything at your left guard. I think Wyatt Teller is built as a run blocker. That dude is massive, but is he the quickest guy? Is he a guy that's going to be pulling a ton? I don't know, maybe, but that's something that I think the Browns need to look into. But I like that point of offensive line. So for me, wide receiver, a speedy wide receiver to complement Amari Cooper is my number one offensive goal. And my defensive goal is you have to shore up the defensive tackles, because the Browns just got gashed by the run this year, and they were bad. Their run defense was bad. So
what do you think about our depth at linebacker, though? I mean, that hit us pretty hard.
It really did. Well, okay, so Anthony Walker Jr. out for the year. Sione Takitaki out for the year. Jacob Phillips out for the year. JOK out for the year. And then I think Jordan Kanachik was another guy who was like on the practice squad, got brought up, started making some plays, and then went on the injured reserve. So that's at least 5 guys. So
that deep?
I mean, and the Browns, in the current setup of the NFL, you usually only play 2 linebackers, maybe 3. You're not playing more than that. But yeah, we might, based on the practice squad and whatnot. So we're going to play a little game here, and you tell me if you agree or disagree. So I'm going to put up who I think should be back on offense next year on the offensive side of the ball. I'll put it up on our screen here, and you tell me.
To look?
Oh, yeah, okay. You can look. Yeah, it's for everybody. Okay. So here's who I put should be back for sure. We're going to get into who should be back, who shouldn't be back. So for this list, these are players, and remember, you're allowed to keep 53 on your active roster. I think 48 are on the game day roster. So you have 5 guys that are usually inactive.
This might be the most unpopular thing we've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, this will be fun though. It'll be fun. So let's see what happens. So Deshaun Watson at quarterback. He's the only quarterback I 100% for sure put on this list. So Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford. At running back, you're going to notice a couple names missing. We'll get to that. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Bell, Michael Woods, Jakeem Grant. Remember, he was tore his ACL, or it was either his ACL or Achilles in preseason. They expected a lot from him in the return game, especially. So I added him to the list. Tight ends, David Njoku, Harrison Bryant. And then I just put your starters on the offensive line with an asterisk next to Jed Wills. Jed Wills, Joel Bitonio, Nick Harris, who was supposed to be the starter at the beginning of the season, once again, tore an ACL on the very first preseason play. Wyatt Teller and Jack Conklin. So I put an asterisk next to Jed Wills because I don't know if I want him back, but he is entering the last year of a rookie deal. And the Browns have to decide, do they pick up the 5th-year option? Because if you're a first rounder, you get 4 guaranteed years, and then a 5th year is a club option. So I don't know. So out of those players on offense, is there anyone you think, get rid of them? Conklin?
Oh, heck
do you know they just re-signed him?
I know, and he's so delicate. He's injured so often.
He really is. And when he's healthy and right, I feel like he is so good. But you're right. He is, since 2020, he kind of seems to have taken a step back. But the Browns locked him up for about $15 million a year over the next 4 years.
And it'll be fine. Like, I don't fear that that's going to bite us. But
yeah,
if you look at the games that he missed, they were critical, and he just wasn't there. And that you just got to have reliable health.
I think a lot of people would be in your camp with Conklin. I think when he's right, you want him, and when he's not, he's an overpaid guy sitting on the bench. So we'll see about that. All right, defense. There's a lot less guys on this list. I only could come up with 11 that I would put on my for sure should be back. So Myles Garrett, defensive end. Isaiah Thomas, you just drafted him last year, got some rotational time this year.
He got filled in a bunch of positions.
He did really well. He plays like both inside and outside on the defensive line. Alex Wright was one of your 3rd round picks this year. He is a freak. And I wrote Alex and then Alex Wright. Maybe Alex is his middle name too. I don't know. Wright, yeah. But Alex Wright. So I only have 3 guys on your defensive end that I think 100% should be back. And then defensive tackle, Jordan Elliott, Perrion Winfrey. Again, Jordan Elliott, I think, is entering his last year of his rookie deal. And then Perrion Winfrey was a rookie this year, was not active a ton. So those are the 2 defensive tackles. I'm missing a bunch right there. Thoughts so far on that list?
Well, I mean, I see Denzel Ward is there, and I know you cooled on Denzel Ward towards the beginning of the year. Have you come back from that a little bit and willing to give him a chance to
yeah. Denzel Ward's fine with me. I think he makes a lot of money. However, if they can find a trade partner and you can get a 1st round pick and maybe a player back for Denzel Ward, I think your number 2 and number 3 guys are really good in Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson. So Denzel Ward, I would love to keep him around, but if he doesn't stick around, I'm okay with that. But because you're going to be acquiring an asset. Now, corner, you got to have 3 good ones too in this league based on, playing the Bengals, who have 3 amazing wide receivers and whatnot. So just my opinion on that.
Delpit's been amazing, by the way.
Delpit, I think Delpit had a little bit of a struggle in the beginning of the year, but at the end of the season, he really stepped up his game. And he was one of the few guys that was able to cause turnovers, create turnovers for the Browns. So I think that's a really, really good player to keep around going forward. All right. Now, specialists. This is an easy list because there's only 4 guys really. Cade York, he's going to be your kicker. You drafted him in the 4th round. Corey Bojorquez, the punter, I thought was really good this year. And the Browns punted a lot to show him off, unfortunately. Jakeem Grant is an offensive player, but also will be your return specialist if healthy. And Charlie Hewitt might be the 2nd longest tenured Brown on that list. So any problems with that list?
Not at all.
I think that's the easiest one right there. However, I think they need to boot the special teams coach Prefer and bring somebody else in. They just need new blood.
Now, when does that traditionally happen? Is that this Friday when they start eroding?
Usually it's Monday.
Really?
Yeah. There's been a lot of yesterday, like Cliff Kingsbury was fired by the Cardinals. They usually call it Black Monday in the NFL. Like, so the day after the last, but there's some other coaches right now that are in limbo. Like Lovie Smith got fired by the Texans, which we'll talk about that because that was an all-time move by Lovie Smith, what he did, if you guys didn't see it. But I don't think Jeff Saturday will be back for the Colts, who kind of took over for them. And then there's some other coaches in limbo, and I think there's already been 3 or 4 coaches fired this year. There'll probably be, usually there's like 7 a year that like usually gets churned in, churned out. So that's where we're at. All right. Now, here's another list, Joe.
Okay.
Guys, we'd love to have back. So this is just my list. Okay. Again, so Anthony Walker Jr., I thought played great before he got hurt. So great linebacker, really solid linebacker, great leader. Jacoby Brissett, he's not going to be your starter, but he would be the best backup in the league. Reggie Ragland, they brought him in, I think, off of someone's practice squad. He's a former Alabama linebacker. He played really well. And look at that number he's wearing. He's wearing Bernie's number 19, towards the end of the year. AJ Green, a corner. He's kind of like your 5th guy at corner. Sione Takitaki, unfortunately, tore the ACL, one of the linebackers there. Same thing with Kanashik. I'd like to have both of them back. Deion Jones, they brought in a trade after a couple of those linebackers went down with the Falcons. He's getting up there in age. I think he's like 33, 34, which in NFL linebacker years is kind of getting old, but former Pro Bowler, pretty nice player. Ethan Posek, center, did a really good job stepping in did a really good job. He was going to be your backup center this year, but played most of the games as your starter with Nick Harris going out. James Hudson is kind of like your swing tackle. That means if Jack Conklin gets hurt or Jed Wills gets hurt, he can step in at right or left tackle and play either one. That Froholt, I don't even know how to pronounce his first name, but he can play guard or center for you. Even stepped in when Posick got hurt. And then Chris Hubbard, a nice kind of swing tackle there as well. So thoughts on that list, Joe?
I just see all the people that caused yellow flags this year on that list.
There's definitely a few. There's definitely, especially on the offensive line there. So no doubt. Here's the most fun list. Okay. I have 13 guys on this next list. Who needs to go? Let's get these guys out of town. And guess who's? And by the way, these are in number order. So number 10, Anthony Schwartz. I think it's time to say goodbye to the experiment. I know you used the 3rd round pick on him 3 years ago, but it's time to end it. Just
he's
get him out of town.
He's taking up a roster spot. You're not using them. Unload him.
Agreed. Demetric Felton, another guy that you drafted. You drafted him in the 7th round a few years ago. He's a nice athletic player, but every player in the NFL is athletic. You're not sure if he's a running back. You're not sure if he's a wide receiver. So I would say it's time to cut ties. Maybe sign him to the practice squad if he'll agree to that. Greedy Williams. I think his time in Cleveland, too, is coming to an end. He didn't do anything to impress me this year. The next guy, Kareem Hunt. I don't know if it was the Browns using him poorly or he just wasn't good this year. I felt like every time he touched the ball, outside of that first Carolina game, it went for a negative play, and I was not very impressed with Kareem Hunt this year.
I still like his role, that 3rd down kind of back. Yeah. I think he plays it really well, and I think it commands the respect from the opponent too.
Okay,
when he comes in,
so. And I don't know. Again, like you said, he plays that. He should be successful in that role. This is as a rookie in the NFL, which was not that long ago, 5 years ago. He was the leading rusher in the NFL, which is insane to think about, but just didn't do much this year. And again, is that on Stefanski? Is that on Hunt? Is that on the offensive line? It's maybe a combination of all those things.
Well, you bring in a second back and use them in that role too, because I think it's still pretty important, even if it's not Kareem Hunt.
And I think that might be Ford, who they drafted last year. I think that might be his new role with the Browns next year. We'll see. Because your 3rd string running back, Dearness Johnson, who has put up some really nice plays and games over the past couple years, he didn't do anything this year. I don't like a couple special teams, plays here and there. That's it. And feel free to chime in on any of these guys or whatever as we go. Ronnie Harrison, I think it's time to cut ties with him. He's gone. The next player for me, I didn't want to put him on this list, but I think a lot of Browns fans want John Johnson gone. Your thoughts?
You know what? Yes. And honestly, I think the new culture is going to require players like John Johnson and Ronnie Harrison need to sunset.
Yeah. And John Johnson, here's the thing I heard about him. Next year, he makes $13.3 million or something like that, which is a lot for a safety. Now, the Browns, if they cut him after June 1st, it only costs them like $2 million. So they save $11 million against the cap, which $11 million, you can go out and get a nice defensive tackle. You can go get maybe an offensive tackle, or I'm sorry, a defensive tackle, and maybe a nice wide receiver that you can, accumulate with some other money that you save up. So that's just, just what I was thinking. Another guy I think it's time to maybe, say goodbye to is Jacob Phillips. Sorry if I put that list up here. Jacob Phillips and Chase Winovich. Chase Winovich comes in for a year. Not very impressed with him. Jacob Phillips just didn't do a whole lot in his time and has been very injury prone. I put Jed Wills on this list. I know he's not going anywhere, but I would not mind to see the Browns trade him and try to get like a 3rd or 4th round pick for him and maybe draft an offensive line and sign a cheaper guy going forward. Again, offensive line is a very, very valuable position, but for me, Jed Wills,
we're just spoiled with left tackle. That's
you're right. Yeah, and we saw Joe Thomas for so many years. Could you imagine Joe Thomas now like how many bad teams he played on. If we had Joe Thomas, prime Joe Thomas on this team, how nice. Well, for Joe Thomas, how nice would it have been playing a winning team too. So it is what it is. Jadeveon Clowney, I don't know if you saw the whole mess with him last week, but he apparently one game earlier this year refused to play any down but third down. He called out the coaching staff. He basically said, I'm not being put in primary positions. I don't know if Jadeveon Clowney realizes this, but you're playing in an advantageous position anytime you're opposite Myles Garrett, who is top 3 defender in the league. So if you're a top 3 defender in the league and the opposite side, like he was complaining he wasn't getting the most favorable matchup. You're going opposite Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is the best player on the field, no matter what. And Jadeveon Clowney, I don't know. I had enough of him, and I think, yeah, maybe some guys like him, but I think he's an addition by subtraction.
Yeah, and these divas gotta go. Anytime one of those people, they're a distraction. We saw this at OBJ. OBJ.
Yeah, OBJ.
OBJ.
Yeah, OBJ.
Right? And OBJ
and Baker.
And we had Clowney, and now we have Kareem Hunt. That's kind of like being outspoken, but not complimentary to the team. I mean, that's more important than anything. You
Agreed.
Should talk outside the team, and that's just no good.
Exactly. And handle your business and do what you got to do. But Jadeveon Clowney's a guy that's made a lot of money in this league. He's not hurting for money. But to complain and call out the coaching staff like that, I don't like it. So
he'll find a place somewhere.
He will. And he's a journeyman now. He was former number 1 NFL draft pick, but we're talking almost a decade ago now. Tommy Togiai, I have, I know he's a Buckeye. I get it, but he has just not been the player the Browns drafted or thought they drafted. He's not been very good. Taven Bryant, they signed this year. I'm okay with him coming back if it's on a short-term, low-budget, team-friendly deal. But otherwise, I would say it's time to turn the page from Taven Bryant as well. So those are my list of guys who can.
I want you to keep a scorecard and see how many of them we nailed.
You know what? I'm going to keep that list and I'll share it out. And I'm very curious. I put that out. I said, just send me numbers of guys you want gone. And the number one a guy was 43. Yeah. And to me, that's really surprising because I think John Johnson is a really good leader in the locker room. He's a guy that wears your green dot a lot for the Browns. And he had some really good years before he came to the Browns. So is it Joe Woods not using him right? Is it him not playing to his ability? What is it? So there's a lot of angst with him. So
and one addition I'm going to make is I'm going to split Kevin Stefanski into 2 people. One's the head coach and one's the offensive coordinator. And I would like to fire the offensive coordinator and get a new one, please.
I disagree. I'm going to push back on you. Ahead. I actually think Kevin Stefanski is a really good offensive coordinator. I think he could be a better head coach.
So you're firing the head coach version of Stefanski.
I am. Okay. I think Kevin Stefanski is a very bright mind with play calling, but with leadership, especially, it's like he hasn't been able to handle the high profile players, like you were saying.
For sure.
OBJ, Clowney, Baker Mayfield. Those are all guys that are outspoken and. Who are the best leaders on this team? As you mentioned earlier, Nick Chubb, quiet. Myles Garrett, pretty quiet. Jacoby Brissett, he's more outspoken, but he's a backup quarterback as well. Deshaun Watson's not super outspoken. And then Amari Cooper, super quiet dude. So
well, I think we can agree that he can't play both roles, and it doesn't matter which one.
Yes.
I think if he splits off, he needs to hire somebody in that position.
I 100% agree with. I think he needs to figure out which one he wants to do more. And he's not going to give up a head coaching job in the NFL. But I think he is a good play caller, but can maybe, work with that during the week. But instead of burying your face in the play sheet, I think maybe let somebody else handle that. You can override them on a call or something like that throughout the game.
That's the thing. Like when you're doing both, then your play calling's always a suspect because no matter who the offensive coordinator, if it goes well, you're a genius, and if it doesn't, you're
exactly
an idiot, right?
Yeah.
But you can't afford that with your head coach because he needs credibility there.
100%. Okay. Now we're back to agreement on that. So you're good. You're good. I just want to wrap it up with this. If you're not completely sick of this team yet, after especially losing to the Steelers, which they could have swept them for the first time in like 32 years or something like that. But they lose. And the Steelers are eliminated from the playoffs too. But here's their schedule next year. Now, this isn't in any particular order. These are just the teams they will play. So you'll play your 3 home and homes with the AFC North teams, the Ravens, Bengals, and Steelers. At home as well next year, you got the Cardinals, the Chicago Bears, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Jets, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Tennessee Titans. Those are your home games. Away, as I mentioned, the AFC North teams. Then you got the Denver Broncos. You have the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, the LA Rams, and Seattle Seahawks. So there's some, we're getting way ahead of ourselves because you can't play the schedule game when the playoffs haven't even started for the previous season. But
and Deshaun hasn't hit his massage season yet, so we don't know coming back.
Joe. We're gonna have him all 17 games next year. He's gonna play. He's gonna be fine. He's under team restricted massage therapists. He's got a really good-looking girlfriend. I don't know if you've seen her, but she's nice. So we'll just leave it at that. So
you turned red. Justin is flushed.
I was a little, the massage situation with Deshaun. It's like I just want the page to turn so bad with that. Just be done with it. But I know it's not. But if the Browns start winning, things start going away a little bit more.
And he stays out of the freaking news.
Yeah.
Just be quiet.
Yeah. Or should I say I need it to go away?
Nice.
You like how I did that?
Well done.
Yeah. Both a couple lame dads on here telling lame dad jokes. So
what we do.
Here is the final standings. Now, again, Buffalo and Cincinnati only playing those 16 games based on the DeMar Hamlin injury in that Bengals-Bills Monday night game. So Buffalo is the 1 seed. Or I'm sorry, excuse me. Kansas City gets the 1 seed. Buffalo gets the 2 seed. The playoffs, there could be a neutral site AFC championship game, which would make things very, 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 very interesting. So these are a look at the final records. I'm going to show you. I made some preseason picks and bet some over-unders, and I did pretty good. So preseason.
It's a winning card.
I mean, that's 11 out of 16. So not bad in the AFC. And as you can see, I picked those on September 8th. So unfortunately, this was before gambling was legal in the state of Ohio, because next year, what I'm planning to do is put some money where my mouth is and put like $50 on each of those. So do an $800 bet. And if it would have came out this year, you've been, plus 250 or so. Yeah. So that's not too bad. So next year, maybe I'll do $10 a team to, $160.
So
yeah. We'll have some fun with that. So we'll each do maybe $10. So what would that be? $320 on the AFC. We'll do over unders and we'll see what comes out, and we'll have some fun with it.
Speaking of betting, do you have a Bernie slide there?
Oh, I do.
Do you really? All
yeah.
Right, we'll wait till
wait, no. You know what? I don't. Let's bring that back. Okay. So what do you think about the whole Bernie Kosar mess? You know that. Yeah, that's why you brought it up.
Sure.
Okay.
And you know what?
By the way, hold on real quick. Yeah. Bernie, I'm going to look in this camera. I have messaged you and you have wrote me back. And you were a willing participant to come on our show. And I think you were a fantastic human being. I think you are one of my favorite Browns players of all time. Joe's agreeing with me. I, being a Boardman High School graduate, we share the same alumni high school. But your publicists won't get back to us. So it's kind of frustrating. So tell your guy to write us back, because you will communicate with me, but your publicist will not. So anyway, back.
But
I'm going to clip that and send that to him.
His schedule just opened up.
It did.
So
tell us why.
So, the rules. You really do. And, the one thing is it was done where if he won, he was giving it to charity. So it was a spectacle, taking advantage of the new
$19,000, right?
$19,000, giving the winnings to charity. But clear it with the NFL. That's a boneheaded move that somebody who ever manages him should have never let that go down, because that is that's hurtful to your career. I mean,
probably the same person that manages him is the one that's not writing us back.
Yeah, he's a jerk.
Yeah,
whoever you are.
Unless you come on the show, then we'll apologize. Yeah. But yeah, man, frustrating.
It is
frustrating. So yeah, I saw the Browns like had to cut ties with him based on like some sort of NFL rules. So.
Yeah. So I mean, it's nothing against the Browns. A lot of people were beating up on the Browns.
Yeah,
like this was their call. It really isn't. You do that and you can't be part of the team.
Yeah, it's like Pete Rose did the same thing with a bet because he's no longer affiliated with Major League Baseball, the Cincinnati Reds. And it's like, if you're not going to let me in the Hall of Fame, for God's sakes, I'm just going to make all the damn bets I want anyway.
I'm good at betting. I'll make my money there.
A couple things. One, Bernie, come on the show. Two, Pete Rose, put him in the Baseball Hall of Fame too.
Publicist, be nice to us.
Yeah, come on. So with the NFL playoffs in order and the other teams eliminated, here's a look at the top 18 picks for the next year's NFL draft. So the Chicago Bears get the number 1 draft pick, first time in history for the Bears, or at least since like the 40s or something like that. The Bears have a big decision to make. They have Justin Fields at quarterback, who might be the most improved player in the NFL. Only one of like 3 quarterbacks to have over 1,000 yards rushing, which is unbelievable. But they have a big decision to make because Bryce Young is in this draft. CJ Stroud is in this draft. And do they want to go all in with that and trade Justin Fields and acquire some more assets? Or do you trade that pick to the highest bidder? So they have some decisions to make there, and we can get into all the semantics and stuff. Like once it comes down to draft season, we've done a draft show the last couple of years, so that would be kind of fun. But
it would be a terrible draft show for us this year, honestly.
Well, last year I think we did our show. You were up here with Fast Freddy.
Yeah,
I was in the back, and we did a show, I think, through the first 25 picks of the NFL draft, which is a lot of picks when your team's not on the clock. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting when the Steelers took Kenny Pickett and whatnot. But yeah, it's always interesting, the draft, but it's when your team isn't quite in the fight. You know what I mean? It kind of takes a little bit away from it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
So the Georgia quarterback, that Stetson guy, 92 years old.
Yeah.
Is he the Brandon Weeden of this draft? Is he going to be in the draft, or is he going to play another couple years?
Oh, no. He's his eligibility is up.
Finally,
Stetson Bennett will and I have a little bit of a throat issue right now where I'm having a little scratchy voice. But I might take maybe 2 fingers of bourbon. But Stetson Bennett will be in the NFL draft. I would guess he'll be like a 4th or 5th round, maybe a 6th round pick, just based on his size and stature. Thank you, sir. But yeah, Stetson Bennett has proven, though, he belongs.
Yeah,
sure. Stature, size, whatever you want to say. But Bryce Young, who's like 5'9", 5'10", is going to be probably number 1, if not a top 3 pick in this NFL draft. So, we've seen it before. Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield's not a tall guy. So it is what it is. It is what it is at this point. You got to pick the best player that you think for your organization. But Stetson Bennett, I would say, would be somewhere in that 5th. He'll be in a 3rd day draft pick. We'll just say it like that. But I think he would be a really nice backup quarterback to have in the NFL, and someone you could develop, learn your system, kind of like what he did at Georgia. Just came in, wasn't guaranteed the starting job, transferred back in from a community college or whatever, and did a really nice job. So
yeah, I think Chicago still takes a quarterback in the first one.
Okay.
Justin Fields might have done good, but I think
I just think there's no weapons there in Chicago, but very interesting thing. And, I know I'm going a little longer than I usually do today, but the Texans, who everybody thought was the worst team in the NFL all year, basically had the number 1 pick locked up. Their coach, Lovie Smith, who has been an NFL coach before, he's been a college coach before, was like, screw it. He knew he was getting fired. He went for the win. And apparently that memo from up top didn't get down to him. They went for the win. They went for 2. They beat Indianapolis 32-31. They get the number 2 pick, kind of give an FU to his bosses because he knew he was getting fired. And hey, have a little fun with it. Why not?
Wow.
Yeah. So
go Lovey.
Yeah. And another interesting note. So you notice the Seahawks, who are in the playoffs, get the number 5 pick because they traded Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos, who had the 5th worst record in the league. The Lions will pick 6. That pick comes from the LA Rams, from the Stafford trade. The Eagles, who are one of the best teams in the NFL, will pick number 10. And then the Texans will get the Browns pick. So the Texans will have the number 2 and the number 12 pick. And the Steelers, how about this? Steelers will get that. Let me bring this up here. Sorry, there goes the voice. Steelers get the 17th pick, but they will get the first pick of the second round.
Are you dying? Are you okay?
I'm okay. I'm dying on the inside. But the Steelers will get the 33rd overall pick based on them trading Chase Claypool for a second rounder, and then the Bears, had the worst record in the league.
I'll tell you, Kenny Pickett really impressed me with this last game. He really did. It was way better than they made him out to be.
Here's what I will say about Kenny Pickett. If you look at his overall numbers, especially against the Browns in that last game, they weren't very good. It was like 13 of 30 or something like that. But he completed 3 throws, all on third down. It was like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 15, 3rd and something else. And they were all game-changing plays that got the Steelers over the hump. He is a really good quarterback. I don't think he's going to be great. I also don't think he's going to be bad. I think he's going to be in that middle tier of quarterbacks. So
Steelers fans hated him because they were going from Roethlisberger, and he's not a Roethlisberger by any stretch.
But then I think once they got Trubisky, they loved him because he became the lovable backup. And they're like, yeah, we don't need Trubisky. Give us Pickett, who was, played at Pitt and all that stuff. But
Mason Rudolph's like, what about
yeah, I know Mason Rudolph played a little bit this year, but I'm so glad I didn't see that smug face at all. I have to show you one more sad Brown stat. This is maybe the saddest Brown stat of all time.
Why do you got to do this?
Here it comes. So the season, and this is based on last year, the season of each team's last division title. Most teams are 2019, 2020, 2021. The Browns are 1989. The Browns have not won their division since 1989. Very sad. Now, you might say, oh, the Browns made the playoffs in 2002 and 2020. Well, it's like, in those years, even when the Browns made the playoffs and beat the Steelers, got to the second round, almost beat the Chiefs, they were still the third ranked team in the AFC North, even going 11-5. That just shows you 2 things. 1, the team has not been very good. And 2, they do play in a really, really tough division. Formerly with the Houston Oilers way back in the AFC. Was that the AFC North or whatever it was before? It was the AFC Central before. That's what it was, with the Browns, the Houston Texans, the Steelers, and the Bengals. And now, with the Ravens, since they've moved. So
just remember, the Quantum Leap and A-Team were the number 1 shows in 1989.
Oh.
Not even true. I just
I was gonna say, okay, that's pretty. You knew that right off the top of your head. Even better. All right, here's a positive Browns story. Most likely, the Browns will probably be playing in the Hall of Fame game this year because if you look, Joe Thomas is in the finalists for the NFL Hall of Fame. I think he's basically a lock to be in this game. And getting a local product. He is from Wisconsin, but getting a local guy from Cleveland, just down 77 in Canton, will be a phenomenal thing for the Cleveland Browns. All right, just a couple more minutes here. Let's go to the NFL playoff bracket, which, if you haven't seen it, pretty impressive here. The Bengals and the Ravens will take on each other in the 3-6 matchup. The Dolphins and Buffalo will play in the 2-7. And then in the 4-5 game, the Chargers and the Jaguars. The lowest remaining seed will play Kansas City, and then the other two will play each other. That's in the AFC. In the NFC, you got the Giants and the Vikings. You have Seattle at San Francisco, and you have Dallas at Tampa Bay, and then you have the Eagles as the 1 seed getting the bye. Now, full transparency, I already put in a money line parlay with the Bengals, the Bills, and the 49ers. I put in a 3-game parlay for them to win, just win straight up. I think it paid even money. And then I also took the Bills and the Bengals, or I'm sorry, the Bills and the 49ers against the spread. That paid like 3-1. So I think both of those teams are going to cover this weekend, but
all right,
that's why it's gambling.
Give me your matchups for the East,
who I
NFC
think,
and the AFC.
So who I think is going to win?
Yeah, AFC, NFC. First.
All right, the Bengals are going to win. The Bills are going to win. Now, this is just no point spreads. This is just winning.
Yep.
I think the Chargers are going to win against the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars snuck in by the skin of their teeth last week, but so I'm going to go Baltimore, Buffalo, LA. And in the NFC, it's the San Francisco for me is a lock to win. The Giants and Minnesota is a tough game for me to pick, but I'm going to go with Minnesota at home winning that game. I think that game's a very close game.
Well, just give me the final four here in
NFC,
AFC.
All right.
So you said Bengals, Bills in the NFC.
So Bengals, Bills, Chargers, Chiefs. So it'll be the Chiefs and the Chargers, and then the Bengals and the Bills playing each other. Okay. That's my final four in the AFC.
And then give me your
NFC.
Yeah. No,
the final two.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the Chiefs and the Bengals in a rematch, and I'm gonna go with
the winner.
I'm gonna go with the Chiefs. I'm gonna go with the Chiefs to win because I think the Chiefs, the Bengals have had their number, and I think the Chiefs are gonna get some revenge, and they'll get them at home. It's hard to pick against the Bills, but that's what I'm gonna do. So,
all right.
Yeah, so that's where we're at, and we'll revisit this week to week and see how we do. Real quick, I'm not getting into the college football playoff, but man, Georgia laid the absolute wood to TCU, and that was just a shame. TCU had a really magical run, but you hate for it to come to an end like that. Georgia's the first back-to-back college winner since Alabama in, I think that was 11 and 12. So great run for them. And unfortunately, if you're watching that game last night and as an Ohio State Buckeye, man, it's just really a shame because I think Ohio State had enough to win the title this year.
How's Ohio State's kicker? Noah, what's his name? Noah
Ruggles.
Yes. How's he doing ever since
that
kick?
I haven't seen him post anything, but his mother posted something on Twitter and just says he loves being a Buckeye. His dad was a Buckeye. He actually went to North Carolina for college, transferred to Ohio State. But if you look at his track record, first of all, a 50-yard field goal is no gimme. And I don't care if it's the NFL, college football, whatever, it's no gimme. And he kicked a 48-yarder early in the game, made it. It looked like it would have been enough. But I mean, think about the pressure that goes on a kid like that. But I think he's doing okay. And anyone out there that threatens someone via social media, any kind of athlete, or especially a college kid who is just unfortunately just they're 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. This kid missed a kick that unfortunately would have, if it went through, probably won the Ohio State the national title. It didn't, but
that
it
takes
is what
a
it
chunk
is.
out of you, though, and especially with kid who's just coming up.
It is. Ranks, he'll never forget that. And believe me, there's no one hurting more than that kid,
right.
And
I feel for him, and
I do too.
I hope everybody rallies around him and lets him know, especially other kickers on the professional level need to let him know that it happens at whatever level.
It does, and it's just really, really unfortunate. So, but Ohio State will be back next year. They're going to be really good. Now they do have to replace some important positions, but most of their key guys, unfortunately, the quarterback will probably not be back, but most of their key guys will be back next year. Two more quick things to wrap us up on. The Cavs, we're just at the halfway point of the season, so I want to just touch base here. They're 10th in offense, second in defense, second overall in the NBA in differential in rating. They are also 18-4 at home, 8-11 on the road, 17-8 against the Eastern Conference, 9-7 against the Western Conference, and 6-0 in overtime. And then one more note here for the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell was the Eastern Conference Player of the Week last week, averaging 37.7 points a game, 5.3 rebounds, 7.3 assists, and the Cavs went 3-1 in those games. So a look ahead real quick. They play the Jazz tonight, Thursday at Portland, Saturday at Minnesota, and back home Monday against the Pelicans. So for Joe, I'm Justin. This has been a Youngstown Studio production. Make sure to find us on all of our social media platforms. We cover all the Cleveland sports, Ohio State, Youngstown State, and we have awesome guests down here at Youngstown Studio. Appreciate you guys watching. Have a great day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content.